Hello there. So this is part 3 of our Blender 2.8 training series, and today we're going to be looking at how the Blender 3D world space works. So the first thing you need to learn when you're working in any 3D application is how to navigate around your workspace. So in Blender 2.8, it has been made easy, and all the tools you need have been added at the top here. And so let's look at those. So the first icon you see is just to turn on perspective and turn it off. You can see this. So this is very useful when you are in editing mode and you want to move different vertices around. So if you are in perspective, it's easy to select things you don't want to select. But when you are in orthographic view, it helps you select only the things you want to select. You'll see that when we come to the editing part. And yes, so this is the tool that lets you turn that on and off. You can also see how this mesh changes, this grid changes, and you can also see the view you're in up here. So right now we are in orthographic. Now we are in perspective. So the other icon here is just our camera view. So in the real world, we can freely move around, look at any direction we want. But sometimes when you want to take a picture, you want to take a specific area of that world. So the camera view is just a visual representation, is a 3D representation of what a camera would be in our real world. And you get the same settings you have in the real world. You have camera depth of field. I have lens angles and different settings we will look at in a different video. But this is just a visual representation of what that is. So you can see this is our camera. This is just an icon to show you where the location of the camera. You can also move that around if you want, but we'll look at that when we start looking at how to manipulate and move objects around in the 3D space. So the other icon you see here is just to move your 3D space around. So you can see, move it up and down like that. So each icon here has a shortcut, and so we also have this zoom. You can see you can zoom into an object or zoom out. So for zoom, you just use your middle mouse wheel as your shortcut. For pan, they're still changing the shortcuts around. I don't think this has been given a shortcut yet. But for the camera, you just hit 0 on your keyboard to go between camera mode and world mode. For the perspective, you just hit 5 on your keyboard, on your numpad section of your keyboard. So you can also rotate around your 3D space by using this gizmo. So if you hit Z, it will rotate to the top. If you hit X, it will rotate to the left. If you hit Y, it will rotate to the front view. If you just drag in this circle here, you can rotate around your object, your 3D world, as you can see, like so. You also have a shortcut for this. So if you hold down your middle mouse wheel, you can rotate around the world as well. But I changed my shortcut to a different key because sometimes when I press my middle mouse wheel, a lot of time it breaks and it no longer functions. So I changed it to a keyboard shortcut. So if you want to do that, you can just go under Edit, Preferences, and then Input, and you should see all the different keys that you can change here. But we want to change the 3D view navigation keys. So you just go under 3D view, and you can look at rotate view. You can see I changed it to this key above the tab button, so that whenever I so that when I press that down, I just move my my cursor around, and then my 3D view rotates. So you can change it to any key you want, but if you don't want to change it, you can leave it to the middle mouse button. But I found that whenever I use that, maybe my mouse is a bit fake and it's not very good, but they usually break, and then that middle mouse button no longer works. So that's why I changed it to a keyboard shortcut. I've also enabled these keys here, so that an add-on that lets you see the different keys I'm using here, so that in case I forget to mention what key I pressed, you can just see it down there. So you can always look at the bottom here to see what keys I'm using. Yes, so we talked about the 3D space, and we talked about three axes, the X, Y, and Z, but we are only seeing two axis. Are they called axes or whatever? Just we're only seeing two axes here. So we are seeing the green line representing the Y axis, as you can see from this gizmo here, and we're seeing the red line representing the X axis. So for the Z axis, it's not added there by default, but if you want to view it, you just go under overlays, and you will see, you can turn it on like that, and you can see now you have that. So you have the Y represented by the green line, and then the X by the red line, and then the blue by the red, by the Z by the blue line. If you want to turn any of those off, you just uncheck those, and you just have just the grid. You can also turn off the grid, but I wouldn't recommend that if you're beginning, because you won't know where your objects are located in the world if you don't have that grid. Or you can turn off the grid and just keep the X and Y axis on, so that you can see, at least you get an idea of where the objects are in the different in your 3D world. So let's turn back the grid on, just like that. So let's talk about how you can move your objects in the 3D world. So again, in Blender 2.8, a lot of things have been changed around. In the previous versions of Blender, you would use shortcuts to access on any of these tools. But now they have added keys, different keys, to let you just select those and move things around. So to select objects in Blender, they have added this toolbar here. The first icon here is just a tool you can use to select your objects. So you select this, and you can select anything you have in your 3D space. You also have the 3D cursor. You can see. So the purpose of this 3D cursor is that when you're adding objects, so let's try add an object. So you have this menu here, and you can add any object you want. So let's try adding a cube. You can see it is being added where you see that 3D cursor. So add cylinder. You can see add monkey head. So that's not the only purpose for the 3D cursor. Sometimes you can use when we start looking at things that like rotating objects and things like that, you will see that you can also use this to rotate as the pivot point of rotation for objects and things like that. Yeah, so this is just the 3D cursor. You also have this tool here. So when you select an object like this, so to select an object, you just left click on that object. Let me first change this to median point again, and you get these control points. You can see we have these circular lines that let you rotate the object on the axis represented by the color. So if you drag on the red axis, you can see it's being rotated on the x-axis, that because it's represented by the by the red line, blue on the Z axis, Y on the green axis. Other than rotation, we also have these pointy points that let you move the object in that axis. And that axis. You also have these boxy objects, boxy boxes. If you drag on those, they let you scale the object in that axis. But because we have rotated this cube, it's easy to see how that works. So let's delete this by hitting X to delete, and then let's manipulate this object here. So if we drag this in that direction, if you hold that box, you can see you can scale it in that. You can make it big in that direction, or what we call that in Blender scaling. And see as like that. But you can see it's kind of confusing what axis you want to use here, because they're all merged into one thing, ball here. So sometimes you want to select the rotation and you end up selecting the scale. So they subdivided this into different different gizmos. So you can select the first one just to access only those move axis. You can select the rotation just to access the rotation gizmos. You can access so you can see you can also use Ctrl Z to undo whatever steps you have made. You can use select this to just select the scale gizmos. You can see on these two gizmos, the move and the scale gizmo, you have these plain boxes or squares. You can see these are just a representation of the different planes. So in the 3D space, we have different planes. So we have the X and Y plane. So this is just like in a 2D application. We only have one plane. We have the X and Y plane. So you can manipulate objects around the space, going in the X and Y plane. But in the 3D space, because we have introduced another axis, we already have the X and Y plane, so where we can move things around in that plane. But we also have the Y and Z plane, so this would be represented by this kind of wall, and then the X and Z plane. So the best way to represent this is by using planes. So this would be our X and Y plane. So just to make this easier, I'm going to turn on, if we go to shading, you can turn on random colors to shade your objects different colors. Every object you add will be shaded a different color. So let me add another plane. We'll rotate this in the Y direction, 90 degrees. So you can see now this is our Z and X plane. This is our X and Y plane. Now we just need one more. You can add another plane, rotate it 90 degrees in the Y, and it will be our Z and X plane. So that means you can manipulate objects in this plane if you hold down that plane, that square there. You can also manipulate things in these planes. Let me just select this here in this plane, and also in this plane. So same with the scale. You can manipulate them, scale them in this axis, so which kind of flattens that in that axis. Then in the X and Z, then that as well. Yeah, so in the next video, I think we can look at something different. I'll see what we can look at.